Gaur Bhakti Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Namo Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prishnaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane. Saraswati Devi, Gauravani Vichari, Visi Sisivare Kuschati, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhara, Srivasadi Gaurabhakta, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhara, Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Ji Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaurabhakta Duplicitous Ji. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare The recitation of your without you, Lord, moment feels like a million years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes, just like torrents, and I'm feeling all naked in the world without you, and I'm feeling vacant in the world without you, and I'm feeling all picked a story today to read. It is the story of Junior Haridas and maybe it's good.
Я просто тоже хочу поставить сверху.
Everything's fine. If it works, don't fix it. You know that saying?
Goodbye.
Hare Krishna. So, we said we were going to talk about self-honesty and pretension. What we discussed in the workshop. So, I wanted to read this story about Junior Haridas. This is Anja 2. Okay. So, Mahaprabhu is taking prasadam at the house of Bhagavan Acharya. At noon, when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to eat the offerings of Bhagavan Acharya, he first appreciated the fine rice and therefore questioned him. Who knows the question? Where did you get the rice? Where did you get such fine rice? The Lord asked. Bhagavan Acharya replied, I got it by begging from Madhavi Devi. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked who had begged the rice and brought it back, Bhagavan Acharya mentioned the name of Junior Haridas. In Bengali it's called Chota Haridas, Junior, Chota. Yes? Have anyone here speaks Bengali? Chota means what? Little? Small. Small.
Like the deed is always
Chota.
like Chota.
Yeah. Praising the quality of the rice, Mahaprabhu partook of the prasadam. Then after returning to his residence, he gave the following order to Govinda, his personal assistant. Who knows what the order was? It's a very interesting story. From this day on, do not allow Chota Haridas to come here. You understand? You'll find out. Very heavy order. What did Chota Haridas do wrong? We'll find out. Actually, he really didn't do anything wrong. But Mahaprabhu wanted to instruct the world through Chota Haridas. When Junior Haridas heard that he had been ordered not to approach Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was very unhappy. No one could understand why he had been ordered not to come. It seemed like that the devotees, it seemed just like out of nowhere, Mahaprabhu was angry. Nobody could figure out why. You know, they say there's different ways to instruct. And one is you can speak, but one is you can teach. You could how do we say it? He's going to give a real life experience lesson. So that's what Lord Chaitanya is doing here. Haridas fasted for 3 days. Then Swarup Damodar Goswami and other confidential devotees approached Sri Chaitanya to inquire from him. So now they're going to ask, why? Why are you doing this? What great offense has Junior Haridas committed? Why has he been forbidden to come to your door? He's now been fasting for 3 days. The Lord replied, I cannot tolerate seeing the face of a person who has accepted the renounced order of life, but who still talks intimately with a woman. You know, in American English, if you're upset with someone and you don't want to see them, you'll say, I don't want to see your face. You have that in Polish and Russian?
Yeah.
Get out of here, I don't want to see your face. So Mahaprabhu is saying, I cannot tolerate seeing the face of a person who has accepted the renounced order but intimately talks with women. Purport. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur comments that Shara Lata, or simplicity, is the first qualification of a devotee, whereas duplicity, or cunning behavior, is a great offense against the principles of devotional service. So, this word saralata is translated as simplicity, and it's translated as the antonym or the opposite of duplicity. So, Lord Chaitanya is accusing Chota Haridas of being duplicitous, which means he's a sannyasi, but he's talking to women. Two different things, opposites are going on. Where simplicity is, you're a sannyasi, you act like a sannyasi. Duplicity, you're a sannyasi, but you don't act like one. That's what he's saying. Well, that's what Prabhupada is saying in the purport. Simplicity is the first qualification of a devotee. That's interesting, isn't it? So you be Krishna conscious everywhere. Don't pretend to be something you're not. Don't pretend to be more renounced than you are. Don't pretend to be more advanced than you are. Mislead people. Don't mislead people and think you're something you're not. Don't mislead people to think you're something you're not. Duplicity or cunning behavior is a great offense against the principles of devotional service. As one advances in Krishna consciousness, one must gradually become disgusted with material attachment, and thus become more and more attached to the service of the Lord. If one is not factually detached from material activities, but still proclaims himself advanced in devotional service, he is cheating. If you're not advanced, it's okay. Just don't pretend to be. You know, like we were saying in the workshop, you just have to accept, for now, the reality of where you are. But don't pretend. Don't try to show people that you're something different. And then, you could exploit people also, or get people to offer you respect when you don't deserve it. If one is not factually detached from material activities, but still proclaims himself advanced, he is cheating. No one will be happy to see such behavior. And I think we've all experienced this. And we talked about this a little bit, how we expect a devotee to be pure. And when a devotee acts, pretends to be pure, but does something very bad, it's very upsetting, isn't it? And we feel like this. Look, you're a cheater. You're posing to be very Krishna conscious and misleading people and getting their honor and maybe their service. And you don't deserve it. But if I'm fallen and I don't, or whatever, I am who I am and I don't pretend to be someone else, that's what Charlata means. Charlata doesn't mean you're up here, it just means wherever you are, that's what you show. What you see is what you get. WYSIWYG. You've seen that before. It's an acronym. You've seen it? In America we have that. What you see is what you get. Like you're buying something, you know. It's used. Yeah. The headphones come with the computer. The speakers come. No, what you see is what you get. There's a crack on the screen. Is there a crack on the screen? Yeah, there is. That's why it's only $50. What you see is what you get. Verse 118. So strongly are the senses connected to the objects of their enjoyment that indeed a wooden statue of a woman attracts the mind of even a great saintly person. So Mahaprabhu is saying, if you're a sannyasi, you have to be very careful. Because even if a man sees a statue of a beautiful woman, it will remind him of the actual beautiful woman, and his mind can become agitated. Yes, true. I don't know, maybe the women think that's weird. But, you know, one thing reminds you of something, and then you get the real thing in your head. Right? You go by a store, like a bakery or something, and they have these plastic donuts. But they look real, but they're plastic, and you kind of know they're plastic. It reminds you of the real donut, it makes you hungry. Isn't it? Sometimes. How can a plastic donut make you hungry? Because it reminds you of a real donut. The senses and sense objects are so intimately connected that the mind of even a great saintly person is attracted to a wooden doll if it is attractively shaped like a young woman. The sense objects, namely form, sound, smell, taste, touch, are always attractive for the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. The senses and sense objects are naturally intimately related. Sometimes even a person claiming control over his senses remains always subject to the control of sense objects. The senses are impossible to control unless purified and engaged in the service of the Lord. Thus, even though a saintly person vows to control the senses are still sometimes perturbed by sense objects. So this whole story is a lesson to sannyasis to be very careful. And to expose bogus sannyasis and babajis. That's the whole point of this story. Because you're all thinking, what did Haridas do that was wrong? He just went out begging. And Madhavi was old. I think much old, like old enough to be his mother or grandmother or something. And she was one of the intimate associates of the Lord. But he's doing this to show what is the standard.
But according to the standard,
According to what?
According to the standard that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu set up,
For sannyas.
all sannyas is supposed to be rejected because they are all talking with women.
Well, one time, Prabhupada said something really heavy. There was some discussion of problems in ISKCON. He said, the reason there are problems in ISKCON is that sannyasis are talking to women. That's what he says.
But they are having female disciples.
You know, when Prabhupada was here, sannyasis rarely even gave women the time of day. When they became gurus, then it was like, now they become like the father. But before that, it was very rare. Sannyasi wouldn't have anything to do with the woman. It changed when they became gurus. And then we saw in one of the Kunteya's presentation, he was making this point that the Shastra says you shouldn't even sit alone, you shouldn't even be alone with your daughter or your mother or your sister. Wow. Because the senses are so strong, who knows what will happen. And then he was quoting that, and then he showed Prabhupada giving Gayatri mantra to Vishaka, who was sitting right next to him, like this far away. And many of the women, they said when they got their Gayatri, Prabhupada would tell them the Gayatri in his room, and he would show them how to count. So they had to sit next to him. So he'd say, come here. And they'd move like 6 inches. He'd say, no, come here. And they'd move another 6 inches. No, come here, sit down next. Of course, they were 22 and he was 72. So it's like grandfather. But still, according to that standard and that social system, you wouldn't do that. So, never hurts to be too strict. If you're going to err on the side of strict or loose, better err on the side of strict. But still, he was, sometimes if something is very, very off on this side, to correct it, you go off a little bit on this side. Because you have to bring it back a little bit. So you get a little strict. Like sometimes I do that. Because I just see there's a problem, and I'll say something, and you'll think, he never said that before. It's like, he's like really becoming a fanatic or something. It's only because it's so off on this side that to get it back, you have to pull it further over here. So I think we could say that's what Mahaprabhu's doing. It's like, this is the standard because he's exposing these Babajis who, in Prabhupada's words, are like monkeys. Monkeys are very renounced. They go naked in the forest and they have 10 girlfriends. So he said these so-called Babajis are very renounced, wearing a little cloth, living in the forest, and they have 10 girlfriends. So here's the verse I was just quoting. This verse is from the Manu Samhita. Well, Manu Samhita is not, we don't exactly apply everything in Manu Samhita. This is what it says. One should not sit closely with one's mother, sister, or daughter, for the senses are so strong that they may attract even a person advanced in knowledge. So Manu Samhita is a very strict shastra, very conservative, and applied in a very conservative society. But I think one thing that we take into consideration when we hear these very strong statements is that things don't always apply 100% to devotees. Not that they don't apply, but sometimes devotees would go home, see their mother. I never heard Prabhupada say, don't get too close. Things like that. And we've never had that experience, that anyone had a problem with their mother, sister. But it's just a caution. You never know. It's a caution. Be careful. Don't get too close. Don't get too close. Okay. Lord Chaitanya is saying, talking about monkeys. There are many persons with little in their possession who accept the renounced order of life like monkeys. They go here and there, engage in sense gratification, and speaking intimately with women. Intimately means being alone. One should strictly follow the regulative principles, namely no illicit sex, no meat eating, no intoxication, and no gambling. And in this way one should make progress in spiritual life. If an unfit person sentimentally accepts vairagya or takes sannyas, but at the same time remains attached to women, he is in a very dangerous position. His renunciation is called Markata Vairagya, or renunciation like that of a monkey. The monkey lives in the forest, eats fruit, and does not even cover itself with a cloth. In this way, it resembles a saint. But the monkey always thinks of female monkeys and sometimes keeps dozens of them for sexual intercourse. This is called Markata Vairagya, monkey renunciation. Therefore, one who is unfit should not accept the renounced order of life. So it's all just this theme of pretending to be more advanced than you are. And there's a big temptation to do this in India because if people think you're a sadhu, they'll worship you, they'll give you money, they'll take care of you. You get a lot of side benefits by being a sadhu, isn't it? So there's a big temptation there. And you may know that sometimes someone will build a temple and they'll make up a false story. In this place, this happened. Or this is where so-and-so lived, or where so-and-so was born, or this Leela took place. Because if you make up a story, then a lot of people will come to the temple. Oh, this is the place that Lord Chaitanya did this. So then, and what happens when people come to the temple? They give money. And you can support yourself by opening a temple. You support your family and live a comfortable life by showing the deity. And sometimes it happens, and sometimes you go to a temple and you think, the deities aren't that well taken care of. You ever been to a temple like that? Maybe old clothes, the altars. It looks like nobody's doing much. But they're showing the deity, they're doing minimal just to show the deity to get some dakshin. So if you can show the deity, if you can show you're a sadhu, it can be quite lucrative. Yes? And you know, you've seen these gurus. They're well branded. They smile just in the right way. They sit in the right way. They have these beautiful thrones, nice tilak. Everything is just like perfect. It's like there's a turban. Yeah, it's like they're in a movie. You know, isn't it? It's like everything's perfect, and it works.
But do you remember this experiment that the one guy made?
Mm-hmm.
That he started to pretend guru and started to have like lots of followers.
This boy, he was Indian origin, but he grew up in America. But he could talk like an Indian. I guess he knew Hindi or Gujarati or something. And he wanted to do an experiment. So he let his hair grow long and grew a beard. He's American, he speaks just like me. But he started talking like this because he grew up with parents that spoke like that, so he knew the accent. He could do perfectly. So he just made up mantras and he started teaching his own philosophy. I mean, he understood Indian philosophy. He just made things up. He wanted to see if people would accept him as a guru, and so many people did.
But the funny thing was that at the end, he admitted that...
And still they were attached?
Yeah, exactly. They said, but because of you, my life changed. So it's fine.
He must have given some good instruction or something, but you know, part of the yoga system or the meditation system is just stop your mind, you know, put it on a different channel. So probably that happened for a lot of people. Their minds just stopped worrying and stressing, so they felt better. But anyway, the point is that there's definitely a market, and you can make money as a guru or opening a temple. One who is unfit should not accept the renounced order of life. One who accepts the order of sannyas but again becomes agitated by sensual disturbances and talks privately with women is called dharmadvaji or dharmadvaji or dharma kalanka, which means that he brings condemnation upon the religious order. Another guru found in bed with a Bollywood star. Isn't it? Mm-hmm. Therefore, one should be extremely careful in this connection. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explains. The word we said markata vairagya, monkey renunciation. Markata doesn't mean monkey, it means restless. Restless. A restless person cannot be steady. Therefore he wanders about gratifying his senses. Just to get praise from others, to get cheap adoration from his followers or people in general. Such a person sometimes accepts the dress of a sannyasi or babaji, but he can't give up desires for sense gratification, especially for women. Such a person cannot make advancement in spiritual life. So it's like Prabhupada would often say, don't cheat. If you can't control yourself, then go into the ashram where sex is allowed, but don't pretend. So he's saying by pretending you won't make any advancement. That's a heavy statement. Such a person cannot make any advancement. Make advancement. There are 8 different kinds of sensual enjoyment with women. Of course, Prabhupada said, if you're a woman, then you just take off the WO and say there are 8 different kinds of sensual enjoyment with men. Just turn it on. What are the 8? Anybody know the 8?
8?
It's like considered subtle forms of sex. Okay, here they are. Talking about women, thinking about them. No, he doesn't list all 8. It says there are 8 kinds which include talking and thinking. That's for a sannyasi, a person in the renounced order. Talking intimately with women is a great offense. Sri Ramananda Roy and Narottam Das Thakur actually achieved the most elevated stage of the renounced order. But those who imitate them, accepting them as ordinary human beings, fall under the influence of material energy. So that is a great misunderstanding. So, we need some context for this, because we know there are, we all know there are different people teaching spiritual life, but not all of them are doing it to get girlfriends. I mean, sometimes it's a byproduct, it happens. You're a good yoga teacher and 90% or 80% of your students are women, young women. So it may happen, but not necessarily that was your intention. But Prabhupada's saying people do this, and that's their intention. And so the context is that, you may be aware of it. We all know about Sampradaya. Sampradaya means one after another. Guru, disciple, Guru, disciple. And there are different Sampradayas, different lineages. Or Parampara. Yeah, Parampara means one after another. Sampradaya means in a certain heritage of teachers. And then we've heard the word Apa. Apa Sampradaya. It means a deviant Sampradaya, not an unbonafide Sampradaya. And so there are sampradayas that think, obviously wrongly think, that to be spiritual you have to do what Krishna did. So what did Krishna do? He had a lot of girlfriends, or took other men's wives. So they do that. And so Lord Chaitanya wanted to expose all of this. And of course, because he's God, he knows that's going to continue. So this story, this Leela, was to expose them. Not that he was upset with Chota Haridas, but he allowed Chota Haridas to be, I guess we call the guinea pig, or the scapegoat. You understand? Scapegoat. Hare. What's the origin of scapegoat? Does anybody know? There must be something with goats. That you blame one goat for the faults of the other goat. Somebody want to look up the origin of scapegoat? S-C-A-P-E, goat. It's one word. I think so. We want it definition. Anyway, you can research and report tomorrow. There must be some origin, some reason, some context. So this is verse 121. After saying this, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu entered his room. Seeing him in such an angry mood, all the devotees fell silent. When someone's really angry, what does everybody do? They don't say anything. The next day, all the devotees together approached the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya to submit an appeal on behalf of Junior Haridas. So Mahaprabhu is teaching a lesson, so no matter who asks and how many times they ask, he just says no. Never ask, give mercy to Junior Haridas. No. And then he finally says, stop asking. If you keep asking, I'm going to go away. Please be merciful to him. He's received his lesson. He's not going to commit this offense again. That's their plea. In the Bible, a scapegoat is an animal that is ritually burdened with the sins of others. Oh, there you go. And then driven away. A goat who takes on the blame in a ritual. Lord Chaitanya said, my mind is not under my control. It does not like to see anyone in the renounced order who talks intimately with women. So he's making his point really strongly, isn't he? Are you starting to feel uncomfortable?
What does it mean, intimate?
Alone. Intimate means close. We were very intimate means like you know one another closely. Very, very close. It's intimate in relationships, usually it's between male and female. Usually in American English it's used more often for male-female relationships. You should all tend to your respective engagements. Give up this useless talk. If you speak this way again, I shall go and never come back. And you'll never see me here again. Lord Chaitanya is making a point, isn't he? Hearing this, all the devotees covered their ears with their hands and went about their respective duties. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also left. No one could understand his pastimes. So the next day, the devotees went to Paramananda Puri and said, "Can you talk to Lord Chaitanya?" Senior. So he goes to Lord Chaitanya's residence and he offers obeisances. Lord Chaitanya offers obeisances. Respected superior. So then Mahaprabhu says, "What is your order? What do you want me to do? Why did you come here?" And then Paramananda Puri says, "Show favor to Junior Haridas." And he doesn't say anything. He says, "Give me permission to go to Alanath, which is a village near Puri." That's all he says. And then he left to go to Alanath. Any of you been to Alanath before? It's in a forest, right? So while he was going, Paramananda Puri ran after him and said, "Come, please sit down. We have to talk." So he says, "I know you're the Supreme Lord and you can do anything you want. And I know all your activities are beneficial. We can't understand your intentions because you're very deep. That's all he said. So, Mahaprabhu understood. And then he went home, and the devotees went to see Junior Haridas. Then Sri Damodar said, "We're all your well-wisher. We're trying to help you. So please believe that we're trying to help you." So they said, "Lord Chaitanya is in his lila of anger. And he'll calm down, so just be patient. Just hold on. And you'll get his mercy. Just, as we say in America, hang in there. You understand? Hang in there. It's like hang on, hang in." So they just said, "We're not going to try to fight it, because if we try to fight it, it gets worse. So we're just going to let go." So Sri Damodar said, "Let's take bath, let's take prasadam." So Haridas and the others, that's what they did. So Lord Chaitanya went to see Lord Jagannath, and Haridas stayed a long distance away from him. He wanted to see him, but he wouldn't get close. So now this is verse 143. Lord Chaitanya is an ocean of mercy. Mahaprabhu Kripa Sindhu. Who can understand him? Ke Pari Bhujite. Who can understand him? When he chastises his dear devotees, he certainly does so to reestablish the principles of religion. Okay, it's a big purport. Not big, but this is a bit of the essence. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta says in this connection, Lord Chaitanya, the ocean of mercy, chastised Junior Haridas, although he was his dear devotee. to establish that one in the devotional line engaged in pure devotional service should not be a hypocrite. You can all say, wow. 1, 2, 3.
Wow.
Interesting. I'm going to read that again. We should hear that again, don't you think? Chaitanya chastised Junior Haridas. Although he was his dear devotee, chastising his dear devotee, to establish that one engaged in pure devotional service should not be a hypocrite. And you have that in Bhagavad Gita. You know that verse? One who renounces but meditates on what he renounced is a mithya chara, pretender. Mithya means false, and achara means acting. So he's pretending. So this is very it's very fundamental to our philosophy, to not be pretentious. Isn't that interesting? So, of course, we're talking about a sannyasi, and we don't have any sannyasis here, but so we have to extract the principle. For a person engaged in devotional service in the renounced order, having intimate relationships with women is certainly hypocrisy. This chastisement was given to Junior Haridas as an example to future sahajiyas who might adopt the dress of the renounced order to imitate Rupa Goswami and other bona fide sannyasis. But secretly have illicit connections with women. To teach such men, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu chastised his dear devotee Haridas for a slight deviation. So he's using Haridas as a scapegoat, kind of, to teach a principle that's very important. Srimati Madhavi Devi was a highly elevated devotee. Therefore, approaching her to ask for some rice to serve Mahaprabhu was not very offensive. Nevertheless, just to preserve the regulative principles for the future, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu enforced the hard and fast rule that no one in the renounced order should intimately mix with women. Okay, so here's the punchline. Had Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu not chastised Junior Haridas for this slight deviation, so-called devotees of the Lord would have exploited the example of Junior Haridas to continue their habit of illicit connections with women unrestrictedly. What does Prabhupada mean here? Well, if in the presence of Mahaprabhu something wrong was done and Mahaprabhu didn't correct or chastise, then everyone would say, it's okay, let's do it. Because it's the nature of Kali Yuga. We're always looking for some loophole, right? Well, one time Prabhupada said it was okay. If you feel this way, and this and this and this, then you could do this. That's what we're looking for. Isn't it?
Yes.
So people would have used this example of Haridas. And although Haridas wasn't disturbed, but they would use this example to exploit their position. Indeed, they still preach that such behavior is allowed for a Vaishnava. Today, you go to Radhakrishna, there are people who will say, this is fine. It is strictly not allowed. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the teacher of the entire world. And therefore, he enforced this exemplary punishment to establish that illicit sexual connections are never allowed by Vaishnava philosophy. This was the purpose in chastising Junior Haridas. Mahaprabhu is in fact the most magnanimous incarnation, but he strictly prohibited illicit sex, especially in the round story. So now you have to apply this story to your position, because you're not a sannyasi. But if you're a man, the same thing. You're married, you say you're married, okay. Intimate connection with your wife, but not other women. Right? Sometimes you find some very well-respected pastor, something comes out. I just heard this maybe 6 months ago. One very well-respected pastor, his daughter came out and said that he was physically violent with her all the time she's growing up. And so these things are common. And not common, but they're not uncommon. And so we have to be, if we're trying to be devotees, at least there's a standard, a minimum standard that Prabhupada expects of us, right?
What about the devotees who are, because it's like more and more popular, because non-devotees are doing it very often. I mean, they are in like informal relationships, meaning they are not married, but they are together and they are like functioning like husband
Married
and wife
couple.
without getting married.
Yeah. Well, that was happening when Prabhupada came to New York. I don't know if anybody was married, but they were living together. So he said, no, you shouldn't live together, you should get married. So he got them all married. Just make it official. Make it legal and official. Because when you make it official, that means you're taking responsibility. So that's better. I guess if you don't want to get married, you're thinking, well, if it's easy way out. If you're married, then time and money to get divorced. If you're not married, easy way out. But the point is, if you're with someone, you should be committed. So if you're thinking we'll be together and won't get married because it's easy to get out, that means you're thinking possibility of getting out. So it's not good.
I believe also that the problem is that, to marry someone, you have to know the person. And to know the person,
You have to live with them.
Yeah, exactly. And
But
this is contradiction because we should not...
no, it's not a contradiction. Because the statistics say there's a higher rate of divorce amongst couples living together first, unmarried. And I don't know why, but I would imagine there's a lack of commitment, and that lack of commitment makes divorce easier.
No, my point was that sometimes people are like in our movement, like in our
To get to know one another.
Yeah, to get to know one another, and like they are knowing
Yeah.
each other, just having some, how to say, imagination about themselves, and then they are getting married and they are very disappointed because I didn't really know this.
I don't think you have to live together, but you just have to spend a lot of time together. I always tell devotees, if you're trying to get to know someone, do something to agitate them and see what they do. Just test them. Just fake that you're angry. See how, I'm so sorry. How dare you yell at me, stupid woman? You know, like test them, see, because it's going to happen in real life anyway. You think that's strange? I think it's, you can take it with a grain of salt. Maybe you want to do it, maybe you don't. But what I was told by some experts is spend time together in a variety of situations so you can see how they... You'll learn more about a person the more you're in different situations with them. Because even if you're together in one place, you may not learn things about them that you would learn if you were in different places. What are they like when they're hungry? What are they like when they're tired? So you're traveling, and couldn't get anything to eat for a while. So it's a different situation than you'll get at home. What are they like when they don't get their way? But anyway, that's another issue. So,
my husband, he has a question. This talking intimately is relating to non-devotees women or?
No. Madhavi was a devotee, yeah. You know, we talk, it's like we have some service, so we talk. Usually not alone in a room, that's not ideal. You know, you might talk, I might talk to you, but we're in public, there's hundreds of people walking around. We finish conversation, so it's
Sometimes
formal.
we might be in a public place and talk in a way that is going to be very intimate. Although there will be like millions of people.
Intimate means informal also. So I think the key word is formality. Intimately would also be very open, kind of breaking down the barriers and the etiquette between male and female. There has to be something there to formalize.
I see the difference because when I joined into the movement, I was like 15 and I joined to the tour. Like the tour of my guru was completely different. As you said, everything was very formal, but right now it's more like, I don't know how to say, girls and boys are mixing together. It's like a campus.
Yeah, if you want to get married, then, I don't want to say go to Woodstock, but you can err on both sides, being too formal also.
We were too formal.
I mean, it's an interesting dynamic. The Western and Eastern mind are different. But the point is that you have some principles. So there has to be something to protect men and women. But we can, I think that this discussion of these details is different than the point that's being made here, which of course is in a different context. But the main point Prabhupada's making is don't be a hypocrite. So like I was saying, you may be on this level, and that's okay, that's the best you can do, but don't pretend you're here. I want the respect of someone who's up here and the authority, but you're not. And we had talked about that in the retreat, about the need for honesty with ourselves. And then we can be honest with others when we're honest with ourselves about our level of Krishna consciousness. Right? If you're married, use the example of a man. If a man is married, he can't have intimate connection with another woman. A woman's married, she can't have intimate connection with another man. It's against our principles. So we can apply this to all orders of life, not just sannyasis. So let's, the example of sannyasis, they get respect. So let's say you're in a respectable position in our movement. But privately, you're doing something wrong and you're taking all this respect. That's hypocrisy. If you're having trouble and you say, I can't, I have to step down from my position because I don't feel that I'm living, I'm not a good example, because I have this habit, or whatever, I smoke, or I drink coffee, or whatever. Okay, that's honest. It's not, you're not being a hypocrite in that sense, because you're not hiding it. You're not pretending to be a sadhu and misleading people and exploiting people with that position. You know, this could sound like, well, what are you saying? You know, if you're fallen, just be real. Yeah, you should be real, but it's not an excuse to be fallen. That's not what Prabhupada says. He's just saying be real. And we read that purpose. Hypocrisy, there's no place, Prabhupada says, there's no place for hypocrisy in bhakti. That's interesting.
But I don't think that those gurus who were part of this common felt they were hypocrites, in the sense that they became sannyasis as a very young man.
At a certain point, they were hypocrites, because they were engaging in activities not suitable for sannyasis.
Yeah, I understand, but you know, the situation made them this way because they became sannyasis. The community had like high expectations, and it was very difficult for them sometimes
Well, Prabhupada dealt with that.
They are not.
Prabhupada dealt with that by letting them get married. So Prabhupada made adjustments. When he saw the reality, he said, okay, don't be a hypocrite, get married. So that's the main point. You know, okay, you can't make it as a sannyasi, so don't walk around as if you're a sannyasi. Get married, and then it's okay. That's what he wanted. And it was, you know, Prabhupada was learning, so he had to make adjustments. Yes?
Есть какие-то рекомендации для семейных людей, в связи с тем, с этой темой, что техника безопасности, как правильно себя вести в семье, семейному человеку, чтобы не происходили какие-то, то есть когда мужчина общается с женщиной более близко, более в семье, именно в семье, потому что, я просто заметил, что когда более близкие отношения происходят, то дальше происходят какие-то разлады, скандалы. Может быть, у него есть какие-то рекомендации.
Maybe you have some recommendations for family people, so that
Wait. What was the first thing? Maybe?
recommendations for family people. Because when they communicate with when a married man communicates with someone else, even within his own family too closely, then there can be some issues. And
That's another topic. Yeah. But being intimate with family members is not hypocrisy. If you have a problem in communication, that's another topic. But being intimate is not a problem. Not being intimate is a bit of a problem. Not knowing how to do it is a problem. Question? Comment?
Chota Haridas
No, Chota Haridas was the example of integrity. Chota Haridas, so he's all alone. And nobody's gonna, if he has a relationship with this woman one night, nobody's gonna know. So he's the example of integrity. What you see is what you get. It's not like at midnight you get something else. The werewolf comes out. There's a funny story. Guru Aswami was trying to make a man a life member, and the man was saying, I'm a Shiva Bhakta. And why should I worship Krishna? Shiva's God. And Guru Aswami was explaining, no, Shiva's not God. And they were arguing. Arguing. He said, but come to my house. Went to his house, he had Radha Krishna deities. Why do you have Radha Krishna deities if you're Shiva Bhakta? He said, I'm not a Shiva Bhakta, I was just testing you. So, Haridas Thakur was tested. You want to hear a funny story? And I don't know if it's the same thing, but Shyama Sundar was with Mukunda and George Harrison, and George Harrison was saying, oh, there's so many gurus, this one is great and that one is great, and Shyama Sundar got really mad. He said, shut up, and he slapped him in the face. George Harrison was so happy. He said, you guys are different. You really believe what you believe. He liked it. But anyway, Thakur Haridas is this example of integrity. Different example. Yes. Don't talk about women. Don't talk about wives. Okay? Keep it on the topic.
Они беседуют с женщинами, прилюдно, и, с одной стороны, ты понимаешь, что есть такие наставления, но с другой стороны, наверное, это как-то обусловлено проповедью, да? Хочется понять, как правильно себя вести, и вообще, надо ли с этим что-то делать, либо, может, рассказать.
We can often see how brahmacharis and sannyasis, they talk to women in public. And on one hand, we know that there are such instructions, like the ones that we read now. And on the other hand, we understand that maybe preaching requires that. So how should we think about such things and approach them in our mind? Should we do something about it?
Well, I can tell you what I see. At least those who have maintained their sannyas, they're nice, but they're formal. I mean, it's not our teaching to not be nice, right? So, Mohini comes up and gives me a flower, and I look and say, okay. Then I just put it there. I want to look at you, just put it there. It's not exactly. But we're not like, oh, thank you, give me a hug. So there's a balance. And anyone who's strict, then they have healthy boundaries, but not unhealthy boundaries. So formal but affectionate, because it would be wrong, especially if the woman's a disciple. Okay, there's some distance, The culture was none of the women came close to Mahaprabhu. It will depend on the guru, the sannyasi, the disciple. But there's a beautiful, beautiful example Prabhupada said. This is really interesting. When Prabhupada lived in Mumbai, when they first went there, he would go in the afternoons or early evening on the top of the flat, and they would put his vyasasana, and he would just meet people there. You may have seen videos of this. He's just sitting on top, you see the coconut trees, and he's talking. And so there's a video where some of the young girls, maybe 9, 10, 11, I guess they lived there in Juhu, they did a dance for Prabhupada. And in the video, these girls are like 9 years old, he didn't look at them. The whole video, the girls are here and he's looking like this. And obviously, Srila Prabhupada was not disturbed by a 9-year-old girl dancing, but he was setting an example. It's just so interesting. So there's boundaries you don't want to cross over. So it's just a question of where you make the boundaries. In the Swami Narayan organization, the sannyasis have no interaction with women at all. Zero. That's their program. But Prabhupada had some interaction, so we follow that, but we're careful. And anyone who's still a sannyasi obviously is very careful. Friendly, yeah, friendly and formal. That's what it is. Not too friendly and not too formal, but friendly and formal. Then it's okay. You have another situation that a lot of the young boys joining now, the female Prabhupada disciples are certainly old enough to be their mother, maybe even their grandmother. So the formality of that would be a little different than if you're the same age, or close to the same age. Right? So your question is, what do you do if you see something you think is inappropriate? That was the question.
Ну да, если может беспокоиться, что по поводу защиты этого преданного, что просто иногда женщина, она...
He's worried about protecting that devotee, because sometimes a woman can
Иногда женщина сама подходит и начинает разговор.
approach him herself and start a conversation.
И некоторые женщины, например, заботятся о том, чтобы найти еще кого-то третьего, ну, чтобы...
He could talk to that woman. He could talk to the woman and say, Mataji, I don't think it's really appropriate. He's a very gentle person. He's not going to say anything. So just because he doesn't say anything doesn't mean there's not a concern. You could do that at your own risk. Depends who the woman is. Make sure you know a little karate, just in case. But I would say, before you decide what you want to do, you have to make sure that you did see something that was wrong, because maybe it wasn't wrong, you just think it is. You know, the Guru's 70, the disciples 25 or 30. It's father, son, or father, daughter. So take that into consideration. But the age, the age difference. So it's father, daughter, father, son, age difference. So you see a little bit of that in the early days of ISKCON and Prabhupada was. It's like today. We were chanting by the Ganga, and there's one young Chinese girl, she's just becoming a devotee. And when we pay obeisances in the sand of the Ganges, she doesn't pay obeisances because for her it's like, this is weird. Why are you? Got all this dirt on our dhoti. You want to see my dirt? Well, I have it hidden now. And so we were chanting, sitting on the sand by the Ganga, and I invited her over because she wouldn't sit down. And I said, "Come sit down." It's like, because I'm kind of like taking care of her a little bit indirectly. Come sit down. This dust is good for you. And then she sat down. So sometimes you might, just to help somebody, encourage them, give them a little time. But if I was doing that every day, then that would be strange, right? Every day you come, you sit next to me. And every day a little closer. Because you have to hear my vibration. Because my vibration is very pure and it'll help your chakra. then you'd be like, okay. In that case, what would you do? That's a good question. You could talk to me. But you have to be guaranteed I won't hit you over the head when you talk to me. That's offensive. So, just because something's wrong doesn't mean the person is going to listen. We heard this lecture by Vaisheshika Prabhu. He was talking about principles. And he said, he did this beautiful principle. He said, I live to be corrected. That's one principle. And he said, everybody turn to your partner and say, I live to be corrected. So I turned to my partner and said, I live to be corrected. And I said, your turn. And my partner said, I can't say that. I don't want to say that because I don't want to be criticized. So, And so he was talking about how advantageous it is to get feedback, but not everybody wants it. So, there's a problem, then you have to tell someone else because you can't tell the person. It's awkward. This is a young girl. You can't say he's doing something wrong because she has faith in me. So then you have to tell a godbrother. Maybe you could talk to him about it. But whatever you do, maintain Vaishnava etiquette and don't make offenses. That's important. Sometimes when someone does something wrong, then we think, well, it's okay to offend them in trying to correct them because they did something wrong. Isn't it? Sometimes. So that's a huge mistake. I'm entitled to offend you because you did something wrong. That's not right. Okay? Can we end now? Have your permission? See you all. So, tomorrow morning, if you want to come, if you want to do japa, we're getting a boat. I don't know if you know about it, but we're getting a boat. We're just going to pull the boat out into the middle of the Ganga and let it float. And so for an hour and a half, we'll float on the Ganga, chanting japa. It's an experiment. 5:20. Try to get to the Ganga by 5:20. If you meet us outside at 5:15, we'll walk fast to the Ganga, or you can just go to the Ganga. And then we'll just float down and we'll chant japa. It'll kind of be like a little japa workshop, japa program. Then the next day, we're going to make a music video. If you want to come on the walk on Wednesday at around 6:45, we're going to meet some devotees and do kirtan, and they're going to film it. There's your chance if you wanted to become famous. This is your chance. Wednesday, don't miss the Wednesday morning walk. And then the play. Did you see the play? The play.
This is exactly time here.
Yeah.
We are having class.
So it's going to go on till when?
Friday.
21st. 22nd. We'll find out. But we're going to have to cancel one day, and so we'll let you know. But my feeling is the later we go, the better the play.
Yeah.
So make all the mistakes in the beginning.
And the less people gonna be
Could be less people. Yeah. So maybe we'll do the last day. We have to find out. We'll find out.
The last day is 20, I believe. 20.
Okay. You sent, yeah.
Yeah, I sent
you
it.
have it on your
Yeah, I
phone?
have it.
So let's do the last day, and we'll find out right now the last day. And we'll say goodbye to all our Facebook friends.